Order. For the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let's have a roll call here.
Mr. Jink.
Yea.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Mr. Kangro.
Here.
Mr. Beckman.
Here.
Mr. McAdams.
Here. Now,
Present.
go on. Action on the minutes. Anybody have any objections to those, the last minutes?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
I second.
Roll call. Mr. Jink.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Kangro.
Aye.
Mr. Beckman.
Aye.
Mr. McAdams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
All righty, old business. What we'd like to do here is if we could switch from the wireless telecommunications tower facility case, which was listed on first, if we could switch over to the fence. That way, it would, I think it'd be a little more expedient in what we're doing and stuff. Does anybody have any objections? No? No? Okay, good. So with that said, if you switch it over.
Okay, I will move forward with the staff presentation for case number 6-24A. Applicant is Rachel Best. Site location is 909 Surrey Ridge Street, as referenced on the auditor's site. Parcel number is 415610D as in dog 058. The zoning is partially estate residential and partially single-family detached structure residential zone R1. And the nature of the request is a variance to allow a fence in the front yard as defined by the Union Township zoning resolution and as set forth in Article 7, Section 712. Here's the vicinity of the site and what's around it. You can see the scale bar on the lower left indicate the 300-foot area. We're looking at about 600 plus feet around the perimeter of the property in every direction at least. Site's located approximately 500 feet to the east of the Surrey Ridge and Rustic Way intersection, which is right there on the slide. The existing zoning, as I mentioned, is both estate residential, which is a majority of the lot, and a portion of it is R1. I'm not exactly sure why that doesn't line up by the parcel line. May have been that way prior to the subdivision occurring. That would be my guess. Adjoining the property is estate residential to the northeast, the east, and the southeast, and in all the other directions aligned more to the west or direct south is R1. Here's the subject property with the topography, and also you can see a stream here by the blue line. It's kind of difficult to see here. At the end of the cul-de-sac, you have a shared driveway that continues down where I'm putting the cursor down to this point here, which then splits off to the neighboring property to the west and then to the applicant's property, which is highlighted here. The area that it's highlighted in this slide is the area of the proposed request for the fence. And I'm going to leave this on here for a minute. You can see with the topographical overlay, there's a 20 to 30 foot drop from about where the house is to near the creek area. Actually, from the area to the creek, it's about a 50-foot drop. Some background regarding this case. On August 9th of this year, the planning and zoning staff received a complaint from one of the neighbors that there was an unpermitted fence being constructed along a shared property line. On August 12th, the zoning inspector subsequently inspected the property and a warning citation was posted, which I think I put in your enclosures, and if I didn't, I apologize. I can pull it up if you need to see it. The citation acknowledged the unauthorized placement of a completed fence in the front yard of the property, again as set forth in the code, how we define the front yard. I'll come back to that. On August 13th, the applicant owner then met with myself and came in with a couple members of her family to discuss how the non-compliance issues could potentially be resolved. And she eventually opted to seek a variance, which is why she's here tonight. In terms of the rest of the staff report, again, the case originated as an enforcement action. I will mention, because you might be like, why did the fence get constructed? Why did we get in a complaint before someone was going to build the fence? Well, we couldn't preemptively visit the site before the fence work started, because it's like telling somebody their hand's in a cookie jar without having their hand actually in the cookie jar. Unfortunately, the only week this probably could have happened all year, I was on vacation that week in North Carolina, and our zoning inspector came down with a really bad case of kidney stones and ended up in the hospital for a day or two and was at home for another couple days. And so what happened was the fence went in during that time period. By the time someone could have got out there, it was already built, and it doesn't take very long to put the fences up. So I think a lot of this probably could have been avoided if we had been able to get out there earlier. We just weren't able to do it that particular time frame. So that's where we ended up as an enforcement action. The existing / proposed improvements is a 4-foot-high Kentucky board estate-style fence located on the southern and western property line, and then cuts back in towards the existing fence that is just south of the house, kind of in the side yard area, based on the orientation of the house facing towards the cul-de-sac. There was a fence previously applied for in August of 2022 with a permit attached to that. That was completed by a contractor. A fence is permitted as an accessory use within the R1 and ER districts, provided that it is located, quote, within any street right-of-way. It is not located within any street, road right-of-way, or within the front yard. And as defined in the Township zoning resolution, the front yard, quote, means the yard most parallel to the street from which the access is attained, being the distance between the right-of-way line for lots not in the subdivisions, or lot line for lots within subdivisions or panhandle lots, and the principal building, including its projections. So the way the house is oriented, and also the way that the property fronts the cul-de-sac, everything in the front of the house is considered the front yard. Even if the house were turned, we would consider this the front yard. On the neighboring property, normally we would consider their front yard to be also kind of parallel what's in front there, between the road right-of-way cul-de-sac, and the house. But their house is actually oriented towards the shared driveway. But for our purposes, we consider this to be their front yard. So when you see the pictures, you'll see the front of their house being towards the driveway, when in reality, by our code, we consider their front yard to be what looks to be their side yard. So it's kind of confusing. Some of these lots that are panhandles or at the end of the cul-de-sacs are a little unusual. The proposed new fence, which is in existence, is about 240 feet from Surrey Ridge, the Surrey Ridge Street Road right-of-way, which is 200 feet further back from the road than the 40-foot front yard setback requirement for an R1 district. So the purpose of the 40-foot front yard setback is to provide continuity as you're driving by on the road. Anytime we have houses that are further back on panhandles or on bigger acreage pieces, they are way beyond that number that's established. And predominantly that's done in part for aesthetics, and that's done for delivery of services, utilities, and also like maybe sometimes in some areas to have enough room for people, if they go off the road, to not end up in your living room. So kind of a combination of things, but you know, that house certainly meets well beyond the 40-foot setback, and the fence as proposed is well beyond that number as well. Number 5 of the staff report, the fence is located within a 100-foot utility easement, overhead electric. You can actually kind of see it here on the previous slide. I don't know, you maybe see a little bit better. There are towers on either end that you'll see in the pictures. Even if the board would consider granting a variance, the staff would ultimately have to issue a permit, and for us to issue a permit, we would have to have something from the easement holder, which in this case appears to be Duke, that says that they're allowed to have the fence in that area. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to issue a permit. And so that is something I have communicated with the applicant, because we would need that in any case to have something there. And if the board would consider a variance, we would also want that to be done in a timely manner, maybe like a 30-day period. I did advise them in the pre-application meeting that we would need that if the request would be granted by the board, and we would need a reasonable time frame to be able to move forward on it one way or the other. Otherwise, the applicant would then have to go back and have the fence moved and address the issue with the contractor and so forth. The applicant did provide some information regarding the placement of the fence with respect to the permitting. I think I addressed that later on in the staff report, so I'll come back to that. Pursuant to section 430 of the Township zoning resolution, to grant the necessary variances, the board would need to find the literal enforcement or strict application of the provisions of the zoning resolution would result in unnecessary hardship. In accordance with section 431, the board would also need to find affirmatively on the following. I'm just going to read the ones that I had comments attached to at this point. It doesn't mean that one cannot attach comments to some of these comments. It was just I commented or provided commentary on the ones that I felt were not as argumentative. The neighbor might, for example, or a complainant might feel one way, the owner would feel another way. I just tried to comment on the ones that were more statements of fact. Granting of the variance would not permit the establishment of any use which is not otherwise permitted in the district. The comment I put here is fences are permitted as accessory uses within both R1 and ER districts in the manners earlier noted in the report. In C, I added a comment: the applicant owner's property is an irregular shaped panhandle by which by the shape of the lot, the minimum front yard setback for the panhandle would be approximately 215 feet from the road right-of-way and would be on slopes of 20% or greater near the stream. Due to the aforementioned topography and stream location, the applicant owner's house is approximately 330 feet from the road right-of-way. So basically, if the owner applicant would have located where that 40-foot setback would have been from the panhandle area, the house would be, kind of roughly in the area where I'm circling right now. Because of the topography you can see there, and it's easily 20% slopes, probably more than that in some spots here. It looks like they moved the house to, what looks to be kind of like the gentler area of the property. And it is an irregular shaped lot compared to most properties. Item D, conditions necessitating the variances do not appear to be of self-created, in the sense that our understanding and the paperwork that we have suggests that the applicant owner paid the contractor to obtain the necessary permits to install the fence, and the contractor did not get the permits. And again, had we been able to talk to the contractor, especially if the zoning inspector would have went out, we would have stopped the fence from going in and would have at that point advised them to stop. We just, again, we weren't in the office to be able to do that. Item D, proposed fence does not appear to impair adequate supply of light or air to the adjacent properties, affect traffic, increase the danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair the property values of the area in general. G, the applicant owner's request for the fence, which was intended to provide increased safety and security, is not considered a use or structure that involves special privileges denied by the Township Code to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district, as the proposed fence is approximately 200 feet behind the required front yard setback. In accordance with Article 4, Sections 430 and 431, and Article 7, Section 712, the Board of Zoning Appeals role in the process is either to enter a motion to approve, modify, or deny the owner applicant's request for the fencing to exist within what is defined as the front yard of the property. I'm going to go through the rest of the slides here. This is the oblique imagery, so you can see the overhead towers here and the lines. You got at least one tower there. You probably have another one just out of the line here, the picture. These are the pictures that were taken on the site visit. This is the end of Surrey Ridge. The driveway to the site is here on the right-hand side. You really can't see the site or the house from the road. Maybe in the wintertime you can. You can see the neighbor's house a little bit through some of the trees. This is looking back towards the cul-de-sac, from the cul-de-sac west towards Surrey Ridge. This is looking directly at the driveway from the cul-de-sac east. This is looking back towards Surrey Ridge where it bends back up. These trees here are what you'd have to see through from Surrey Ridge cul-de-sac to be able to see into this area. This is from the shared driveway where it splits very close to the fence. Basically, if you turned around at that point, that's what you would see. This is the area of the proposed fence in the front yard. And if you look to your right, this is the house that is the neighboring property to the west. The house, basically, the right-hand side of their house is considered the front yard, even though the house fronts the driveway. It's kind of an unusual situation. Similarly, and here's where the property line is. The fence is on the property line here and also in the rear there. If you turn left, that is the applicant's property there, and the house that they're in. And the new fence area you can see here runs until it meets up with the existing fence, which I think is close to that basketball goal. This is looking kind of at the end of the fence back towards the driveway split in the neighboring property to the west. The only other thing I was going to mention is I did pass on an email to the board members from the neighboring property owner that was sent Monday, September the 30th at 10:37 in the morning. And this was the neighbor who had submitted the complaint regarding the fence. In the email, they went over the nature of the complaint, the background associated with things, the timeline associated with things, the time period between August 4th and August 9th, and then went through the various criteria items in the same manner that the applicant would. And I forwarded that 3¼ page statement to you along with the pictures. And that was the only written comment that I received, and the only phone call I received was all about this case was also from the same household. And they are not here in town, they are on vacation, and that's why they forwarded their written statement. With that, are there any questions that you have for me to address?
Is it fair to say without the neighbor's complaint, we would probably be completely unaware of this?
Yeah, we would never have seen this from the street.
Yeah.
And it's not something that probably would have been picked up on the auditors and, for us to be able to see it that way.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, is Ms. Best, did they receive a copy of that?
Of,
The email or?
No.
We were sent, okay. Anybody else have anything?
at least not for me, I'll put it that way.
Gotcha. Well, I tell you, is there anybody here to testify for the fence? Oh, step up here, ma'am, if you would, please. And if you would kindly raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, hold on.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say, but the fence, I thought we had a permit for the fence from Lowe's, which you've probably seen that. I wanted the fence primarily for my safety and security. And a flat place to walk the dogs. We have been, and I wasn't aware of the front of my property. I always thought that was the side. I didn't know where the front of my property was. So I was confused about that. But it gives me a flat grassy area to walk the dog, and property that I couldn't really use before. But now I feel like it's safe and secure. We have had some response from Duke, but we need an official, I think they were waiting to see if we had the variance, but they mentioned putting a 16-foot fence at the top, or gate rather, a gate at the top of the property and also at the bottom where there is a gate now for the young man who cuts the grass. So,
That was Duke that was gonna provide the fence, or
pardon?
you said a fence or a gate? Who is gonna provide the gate?
Oh, Lowe's will. They're very anxious to make everything correct. And they will, as soon as we know what they want or what we should do, they will do it immediately.
Okay,
Okay,
I appreciate your comments.
Okay.
thank you.
Anybody else like to speak for? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
Yeah, no one has to say anything.
No, you don't
It's
have to
just,
say anything.
if you thought you had something to add that maybe we didn't go over, or if there was anything you wanted to clarify, that would be what this is for. You don't have to.
No.
I think like what she said, the safety factor, just the kind of the safety that she
Right.
feels with.
Okay, okay,
And then-
well,
yeah, I'm sorry.
And then I was going to get a letter from the neighbors at the top of the driveway because they like the fence and they understand that I probably need a little more security here.
okay.
So,
The only question, the other thing is, and I know you probably don't know that answer, but typically, the property was surveyed, correct?
yes,
And then in the survey, they'll show the right-of-way, or the easement, the easement for the Duke.
Mhm.
And usually someone will say, and then your fence guy came out and put the fence up, and he didn't say anything about it. Because you usually can't do all, I mean, it's kind of like all these little signals are right there. But I can see how you wouldn't, unless you're,
no, I had
Those
no
guys
idea.
should've-
It was just a grassy, flat area and it goes through a wooded area to
Right.
right up to my garage. And this way, we can walk right out there
Yeah,
they just didn't communicate it to you.
yeah,
and I
Yeah.
never thought about
Shame,
easements.
yeah.
right. No, we understand.
Yeah.
And we do have the form here that clearly says that they would have everything for you. And you believed them, didn't you?
Of course.
Yes, you did. And so this isn't any sort of criticism on you, okay? But people watch this, and so it is just a heads up for everyone. Just 'cause it says that, it never hurts to make a phone call to Union Township and just ask if it has been done. We are happy to give you whatever, it doesn't hurt. So we're not, I'm not chiding you. That's just like a public service announcement, okay? Because people will be watching this, and I would like them to know that when they see things like this, they might just want to save themselves some headache, because I bet you've had a little bit of headache over this, haven't you?
Oh, my, yes.
Yes, yes. And so they could save themselves a little bit of headache, just make a phone call and say, hey, it says they did this. Could you verify that happened? But that's all my little 2 cents right there. I get paid by word, so I try to talk a little bit every night.
And that's the truth.
Is that it?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. Is there anybody here that would like, other than the email, testify against it? No? All right, well, with that said, let's close out to the public forum and discuss it here. This is me, I get how it's in the front yard, it sits back far enough. It's kind of a unique situation. The property has been surveyed, so the question is it acceptable to do that, to allow the fence in the front? It's kind of, like I said, a unique situation. So I think if Duke would provide the information that's needed, like we don't have a problem with it and all this other stuff, to put it in there, I really don't see, I don't have really a problem with it, to be honest with you. It's just me. Anybody else got a comment?
I'll make a motion.
You'll make a motion? Great.
I'd like to make a motion on case 624A pertaining to Article 7, Section 712. Also Article 4, Section 430 through 431, to make a motion to modify for the front yard fencing of the property as follows. The owner must be granted permission from Duke, the easement holder, to place a fence within the easement area within 30 days of this date to receive the variance from the Union Township zoning. Should Duke not give permission, owner must relocate the fence outside the 100-foot utility easement. This decision is based on evidence, testimony, and finding of facts related to the request.
I'll second that.
I have one question,
Sure.
just one question, I'm sorry. So the motion was to approve?
Yes, to
Yes.
modify.
To modify?
Yes, to approve it with the modification.
Approve would, I just heard the modify.
Yes.
I wanted to hear approve.
Okay, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
No,
That's
thank
okay.
you.
That's okay, you know I'm a stickler. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay with that, roll call?
Mr. Jenk,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kangro,
Aye.
Mr. Beckman,
Aye.
Mr. McAdams.
Aye.
Motion passes. And that concludes that case.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys.
I do have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
This might sound silly. If Duke does want me to move the fence, do I have to have another permit for the moving of the fence? Or is that,
You will just need to apply for a permit for the fence one time,
okay,
unless you later on have to make another change to it, like down the road.
okay, just wanted to be sure. Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that everything goes.
Yeah, I'd call your fence person if you gotta move.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Did you get a good lesson? There you go.
Thank you.
This one. All right, we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Thank.
This case,
Finally.
case number is 524A. It involves both a conditional use request and a variance request related to a proposed wireless telecommunications facility. Owner applicant is Arcadia Infrastructure One LLC. Site location is 4762 Tealtown Road. Parcel number is 413106B as in boy 106. And the zoning is, it says plan development, I'm not sure that's correct, actually. That's R1, I'm sorry, that was incorrect. It's R1. Which is correct on the staff report. The vicinity map here shows the location of the site relative to what's around it. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see the 600-foot scale bar there. So generally speaking, at least in terms of the site of the proposed facility, which is right near where that arrow is, we are able to see at least 600 feet in every direction. And in most cases, much more than that. I was just trying to capture the entire property, which is the reason why it's shown the way that it is. The subject property is owned by the Mount Carmel Glen SD Boosters and is approximately 1,285 feet to the northwest of the Tealtown Road and Baldwin Road intersection, which you can see right here as I'm circling on the slide. The subject property is zoned R1. R1 surrounds the property to the north, the east, and the immediate south. Across the street to the southwest is a PD zone property, which is the Cincinnati Nature Center. I don't know, I think that other piece is the Nature Center as well, and it is. So both of these PD pieces that you see are the Nature Center. A little bit further in the background, which is kind of relevant later, if you go up along Benning Road, up here, and then Round Bottom, you can see that whole area is zoned industrial, so that pretty much encompasses what's in that entire map. This is the proposed site with the overlay, so the proposed facility would be between those ball fields there towards the middle rear of the property. Some background on the property in general. The subject property has been zoned R1, single-family residential detached structure since the inception of zoning of the township in 1959. Property's been used as a ballpark for decades. Current owners obtained a conditional use in 2003 for temporary additional dugouts. The owners obtained another conditional use in 2006 to add shelters. Union Township became aware of the subject property being reviewed for purposes of siting a new wireless telecommunications facility in March of this year, when township officials, along with residents of the adjoining property, received written correspondence from PBM Wireless LLC, received March 25th, 2024. And I believe that we had included that in one of your earlier packets, the letter that we received. The township responded on March 26th to the fiscal officer, who is the person or party responsible for the township pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, Section 519.211, to acknowledge or assert that the township objected to the proposed wireless telecommunication facility installation without the required conditional use review and approval process, and also the variance process as set forth in the Union Township zoning resolution. If there had been no objections, the wireless telecommunications facility installation would have moved forward without the township's review and approval at the zoning level. As far as the staff comments, as far as we know, the Tilltown Ballpark property is considered in compliance at this time. I know that the fire department has been trying to get out there for some time to meet with the folks out there to do their inspection and not been able to get a hold of the property owner rep. But as far as we know, everything is compliant. With respect to Article 6, Section 612, Item 3, which is pertaining to conditional uses within that zoning area with respect to wireless telecommunications facilities. The board needs to find the applicant has satisfied all of the following standards. Proof shall be provided by the applicant in a form satisfactory to the board that the proposal has been reviewed and or approved by all agencies and governmental entities with jurisdiction if required. The applicant has provided proof of documentation regarding this proposal has been submitted to the FCC or successors in their respective functions. It appears all other prerequisite approvals have been submitted. Item B, the applicant must demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that the tower antennae cannot be located on any other communication tower, building, or structure in the geographic area to be served. All reasonable means have been undertaken to avoid undue negative impact caused by the clustering of towers within the area. With respect to this particular item, the applicant has provided the locations of all other towers and tall structures within an apparent 2+ mile radius, and has acknowledged that if approved, the new tower would accommodate up to 3 additional co-locations by other wireless telecommunications providers. The applicant has submitted written statements indicating that the 2 closest towers to the subject site are too low in elevation and do not allow the applicant's client to meet its coverage objective. Coverage objective still appears to be somewhat nebulous in nature, other than a reference to address capacity and coverage issues and to serve the Tilltown area, citing enormous growth of the number of customers and call blocking during peak hours. A current predicted coverage and current predicted coverage with Tilltown site map along with the capacity offload map were also submitted as part of the RF memo to identify the service gap, although the existing tower sites and the capacity offload map do not match the other 2 maps. C, in terms of the criterion 612, application shall be disapproved unless the applicant demonstrates technically suitable and feasible sites are not available in a non-residential district not within 100 feet of a residential dwelling, and that the site is located in the least restrictive district that includes a technically suitable and feasible site. The application submittal does not acknowledge whether or not any of the adjacent planned development zone property which potentially allows institutional, business, and industrial uses in general for the PDs, or the property zone industrial, which is approximately a half mile to a mile north of the subject property was considered. Although they do acknowledge that the tower to the north was looked at, which is in that industrial zone area. Nor does the information supplied illustrate Verizon's existing service areas to show acceptable or strong areas versus unacceptable weak areas of service to demonstrate the need for the tower in the identified search ring, which was determined according to network needs and existing sites. Related to this comment, I was going to mention on a related note on pages 2 to 3 of the 524A Teal Town Ball Field Cell Tower Report 1, which is this here, and also on the RF memorandum, which is the one that says Verizon in the top left corner. That is 8 pages long.
Are you talking about the coverage?
That is the first item I mentioned, and the second one is the RF memo.
Gotcha.
On pages 4 to 5, on pages 2 to 3 of the first document that you just showed me, and on pages 4 or 5, the RF memo,
Got it.
the applicant's map appears to show that the full extent of the maps have outdoor coverage, with the proposed new tower only appearing to affect the in-vehicle coverage. So the yellow areas that are, and I'll come back to this, actually I've got a picture of it. Here's the oblique imagery. Here's the site layout as proposed, showing where the property lease area would be. Here's the tower compound with the surrounded by evergreens and a fence, wood fence, 6 foot high, I think. So this is as close as I could show the search ring, and I went out a half mile. That's what that little pointer is for. And the exact same area, if you look at where the roads line up, you've got the predicted coverage. So the legend shows in-vehicle coverage in yellow and outdoor coverage shown in the darker color. And that was the point I was alluding to here. This was what's on page 2 of the one report and 4 of the RF memo. And then the next page shows this to show the increased coverage with the proposed tower. And the main changes there are what you see in yellow, which is the in-vehicle coverage.
Can I just interrupt you a second? If there was a road overlay over that, because they're talking about in-vehicle coverage,
So
what-
if you look at where 275 here is on this, and
Yeah.
if you look at where Brown Bottom Road is, and you look at where 50 is,
Got it,
and you look at where Teal Town Road is, these line up almost exactly.
okay.
I mean, you can see Teal Town Road right here, just like you can see Teal Town Road right there.
So with the new tower and coverage, looks like they're picking up 50 then more or something?
It's primarily picking up the coverage changes around in this area here is what it looks like.
Gotcha.
And the differences in the two maps that were provided, and these were the maps that we've had for the last couple of months. The main difference is what's shown in yellow, which is what's shown as in-vehicle coverage. And so
Okay.
we don't really have anything else to go with that other than the written text. The written text does acknowledge. Let me come to that here. In the RF memo, this is figure 1, which is the plot demonstrating the current gap in coverage, is what it says. Not really a whole lot of detail given in terms of the items that are in the legend as far as in-vehicle coverage and outdoor coverage. Figure 2 was this here, depicts improvement in coverage that would result, which, based on the legend, we're looking at in-vehicle coverage being the big change in these maps, right? Because none of the other colors change, other than the yellow. And then the capacity offload map is a different map, but that map doesn't show all the towers.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask, is too bad we don't show all the other towers where you know, we can utilize some of that stuff.
And that paragraph below, that is probably one of the more relevant sections. Is basically they're identifying that they, you know, the engineers work to identify the optimal location and height at which the antennas would be placed to connect to the existing network to accommodate growing with the identification to accommodate growing customer demand, to avoid interference with other wireless telecommunication sites, and close the growing service capacity gap, which, again, from these maps, the gaps, I'm guessing, are the in-vehicle coverage, because there's nothing else to say otherwise. The site location coordinates produce a search radius or search ring of 0.5 miles. I'm not sure whether the coordinates were exactly where the site is, or if that was just kind of a coincidence. And then the applicant says or the RF engineer says, put simply, a site contained outside the search ring would not meet Verizon's coverage objective. So the search ring appears to be this area here, based on, in short, what we have in the RF memo and the other documentation. And as I mentioned earlier, this up here on the northern area is zone industrial, but it is lower ground for sure. Across the street here, we have property zone plan development. That is owned by the Nature Center. I have talked to the Nature Center, and the Nature Center, the only thing I can basically say with respect to the Nature Center is they were not approached about a tower being on their property. Just putting it simply. And I talked to the Nature Center about lots of other things when I was on the phone with them. It had nothing to do with this. For point of reference, if one of the drivers is the in-vehicle coverage, we have 3,317 vehicles on the average daily traffic for Teal Town, according to the state's DOT mapping. 4,508 vehicles at Round Bottom a day, 12,557 on US 50 in that general area, and in the neighborhood of between 18,756 and 22,362 on Old 74, on all the roads that are kind of in that general area, unless you go further over into Batavia Township. In terms of the rest of the staff report, on 612 item D, monopole installations are required. The applicant was proposing the monopole installation, and has noted all equipment cabinets located at the base of the tower shall be of earth tones. Item E, pole tower and structure placement only be on a lot meaning not less than the square footage requirements of the zone district located within a maximum height being 150 feet. Minimum setback from all property lines shall be 40 feet for property zone R1. Proposed tower will meet the minimum setback from all property lines. Proposed tower height is 195 feet with a 4-foot tall lightning rod with an overall height then of 199 feet. Therefore, a variance for the overall height of up to 49 feet is required. And then I refer to page 7 of the staff report, Article 4, Section 431E of the zoning resolution, which outlines the findings necessary for zoning variance requests. F, regarding aesthetics, public safety facility, 2 such facilities shall be effectively screened. Such facilities shall be effectively screened on each side. Screening shall consist of solid masonry wall or solid fence not less than 4 feet nor more than 6 feet in height. A tight screen of hardy evergreen shrubbery or natural or existing screen not less than 4 feet in height. Use of razor or barbed wire shall be prohibited. Screening walls and fences shall meet the minimum setback requirement as indicated in the table in subsection E above. Spaces between any screening device and adjacent property lines shall be including but not limited to grass, hardy shrubs, evergreen ground cover, and all screening devices and landscape materials shall be maintained in good condition. The applicant has proposed a 6-foot-high wooden privacy fence with no razor or barbed wire, along with 48 arborvitae that are 4 feet tall and 5 foot wide, and a 5-foot-wide mulch bed to enclose and surround the leased tower and compound area. Applicant has noted that it will maintain the aforementioned required screening in good condition. Applicant or successors, G, will, within 30 days of ceasing operation of the site of a telecommunication tower, give notice of ceasing operation to the Union Township Zoning Department. Facilities to be removed within 12 months of ceasing operations. Resale renting of facilities permissible only to other telecommunication systems, subject to the obtainment of a zoning certificate from the Union Township Zoning Department. The applicant would be required to agree to this condition. Any special zoning certificate issued in this section shall be revocable, H, item H, and must be revoked after notice and hearing if any continuing conditions of the certificate have been violated and is not remedied within 30 days of the written notice of the director, zoning director. The applicant would be required to agree to this condition. Item I, the permit application shall list the application of every tower, building, structure within a half-mile radius that could support the proposed antenna so as to allow it to service its intended function. As noted earlier, the applicant has provided the locations of all towers and tall structures within a 2-mile radius, at least on 2 of the maps that we were given. Item J, an antenna or tower may not be illuminated, nor may lighting fixtures or advertisement signs be attached to the structure except such lighting as may be required by law. Applicant has noted that the tower would not be lit for FAA approval, and that only emergency contact signage would be installed on the site. Item 3 of the staff report, in accordance with Article 4, Section 442, in considering an application for a conditional use, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall give due regard to the nature and condition of all adjacent uses and structures. And in authorizing a conditional use, the board may impose such requirements and conditions with respect to location, construction, maintenance, and operation, in addition to those expressly stipulated in this resolution for the particular conditional use as the board may deem necessary for protection of adjacent properties and public interest. In addition to the above and to the specific requirements for conditionally permitted uses as specified elsewhere in the resolution, the board shall review the particular facts and circumstances of each proposed use in terms of the following standards, and shall find adequate evidence showing that such use at the proposed location as follows is in fact a conditional use and established provisions of the resolution, which it is, will be in accordance with the general objectives or with any specific objective of the township's comprehensive plan and or zoning resolution. Staff note here is, as noted earlier, the proposed location of this wireless telecommunications facility is in a single-family detached structure residential R1 zoning district and is in an area that is recognized as one of the main residential living areas of the township. As part of the conditional use process, the applicants for wireless telecommunications facilities must demonstrate that technically suitable and feasible sites are not available in a non-residential district not within 100 feet of a residential dwelling. C, will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the same area. Although the proposed use may be requested as a conditional use in the single-family detached structure R1 zoning district, there remain questions and issues associated with the criteria set forth in Article 6, Section 612, Item 3, sub-items A through J of the Union Township zoning resolution as identified on pages 2 to 4 of the report. Will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. D, will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highway, streets, police, fire protection, drainage structures, refuse, disposal, water, sewer, schools, and so forth. Page 6. Will not create excessive additional requirements and public costs for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. G, will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person's property or general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. H, will have vehicular approaches to the property which shall be so designed as not to create interference with traffic on surrounding property, public thoroughfares. This one's last couple we didn't see any issue with. Will not result in the construction loss damage of natural, scenic, or historic nature of major importance. Item 4 of the staff report, pursuant to Article 4, Section 430 of the Township zoning resolution, to grant necessary variance, the board would need to find that the literal enforcement or strict application of the provisions of the zoning resolution would result in an unnecessary hardship. No non-conforming use of neighboring land, structures, or buildings in the same district, and no permitted or non-conforming uses of land, structures, or buildings in other districts shall be considered for grounds of issuing a variance. Variances shall not be granted on the grounds of convenience or profit, but only where strict application of the provisions of this resolution would result in an unnecessary hardship. In accordance with Article 4, Section 431, the board will also need to affirmatively find on the following for variances. The granting of the variance shall be in accord with the general purpose and intent of the regulations imposed by this resolution and in the zoning district in which it's located, and shall not be injurious to the area or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. The granting of the variance will not permit the establishment of any use which is not otherwise permitted in the district. C, there must be special circumstances or conditions fully described in the findings applicable to the land or buildings for which the variances are sought, which are peculiar to such land or buildings and do not generally apply to land or buildings in the area, and which are such that the strict application of the provisions of the resolution would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land and building. Mere loss in value should not justify variance. There must be deprivation of beneficial use of the land. At this time, there does not appear to be special circumstances or conditions involved with this particular request that are peculiar to such land or structures and do not generally apply generally to the land or structures in the area. There must be proof of hardship created by the strict application of the resolution. It is not sufficient proof of hardship to show that greater profit would result if the variance were granted. Furthermore, the hardship complained of cannot be self-created, nor can it be established on this basis by one who purchases with or without knowledge of the restrictions. It must result from the application of this resolution. It must be suffered directly by the property in question, and evidence of the variances granted under similar circumstances need not be considered. At this time, there does not appear to be evidence to support that the strict application of the zoning resolution would create a hardship as set forth herein. Item E, the granting of the variance is necessary for the reasonable use of land or building, and the variance as granted is the minimum variance that will accomplish the purpose. At this time, there does not appear to be evidence to indicate why the variance for the additional height is needed, as opposed to installing a 100-foot tower that would not require a variance, or a lesser variance request. The proposed variance will not impair adequate supply of light or air to adjacent properties, substantially increase congestion in public streets, increase the danger of fire, endanger public safety, substantially diminish or impair the property values of the adjacent area. And G, the granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privileges denied by this regulation to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. In terms of action required, in accordance with Article 4, Sections 441 to 445, and Article 6, Section 612, Item 3 of the zoning resolution, the Board of Zoning Appeals' role in the conditional use process is to either enter a motion to approve, modify, or deny the applicant's request for conditional use to allow a wireless telecommunication facility on the subject property. In accordance with Article 4, Sections 430 to 431, and Article 6, Section 612, Item 3 of the zoning resolution, the Board of Zoning Appeals' role in the variance process is to either enter a motion to approve, modify, or deny the applicant's request to exceed the maximum height requirement of 150 feet, to allow for a 195-foot tall cell tower with a 4-foot lightning rod, therefore being 199 overall feet in height. Please note that the decisions must be based on the evidence, testimony, and findings of fact related to the request. In terms of the remaining items in the slideshow, here are the pictures taken from the staff reconnaissance. This is looking northwest from the Teal Town access up the road, essentially towards Round Bottom. This is looking southeast from Teal Town. You can see the ballpark sign there. The Nature Center properties across the street to the west. This is looking from the entrance northeast into the ballpark site. The site would be beyond the trees that you can see there from the road. when you first get into the property, there's a parking lot there to your left. You can kind of see in the background. This is where this slide here is where that is. This is looking southeast towards the Teal Town access and the proposed driveway. This is looking northeast towards the site. The site would be over this way. This is looking northwest towards the tower site, which is actually between the two fields that you would have seen on the aerial there earlier. So that is you're looking west, but northwest. This is looking northeast away from the tower site to see what's across the property if you turned around. And this is if you rotate a little more. It's looking southwest away from the tower site, kind of more towards Teal Town Road. And that is all of the slides that I have.
I think we need a break. That was a long.
Do you have any questions for me at this point?
No, I don't. No? Is there anybody here that would like to discuss for it?
Yeah, we'd like to make our presentation and
Sure.
get our record, evidence into the record, and there's a lot to deal with in that staff report. I will talk very loud so you can hear me.
Wait till everything's passed out and then swear to go. All right. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but,
I do.
thank you.
For the record, my name is Matt Price. I'm an attorney with Denton, Bingham, Greenebaum in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I represent the petitioner Arcadia Infrastructure One LLC. My colleague is Steve Carr, who's with PBM Wireless. Steve and I together spent the last 25 to 30 years siting wireless communications facilities across the eastern part of the United States. The evidence that you have in front of you tonight is the same type of evidence that we use for all cases all across the country. It's not missing any detail. It's not incorrect. It was developed specifically to meet the criteria for siting a facility here in Union Township. The first thing I want to address right off the bat is we're not here just because we have fun building cell towers. We're here because we're trying to satisfy a demonstrated service gap that exists and we think is quite easily observable in the materials that we've provided. Specifically, our RF engineer on page 3 of the RF memo indicates that its customers from this area are reporting during peak use times that they have problems connecting to the network, or reflexively that calls to customers within this service area are not getting through, what we call blocked call. This means that the geographic area is no longer being served effectively and that there's a service capacity gap. What he also describes is the steps they've taken to try to optimize the system. Their first efforts are not to expend capital on a new site. They'd rather optimize their existing investment, improve their returns as a company, but they have legal obligations to provide that service. And when customers start complaining about the quality of their service, that's when they act and that's when they zero in on where they need to build a new facility. So what the materials show is that in putting in the coordinates for where that site needed to be located, it results in a half-mile search area radius right around the location of this site. It happens to correspond exactly with the code for Union Township, which requires that we provide an inventory of tall structures within a half mile of our existing, or within a half mile of where we're proposing our tower. And that's very conventional, it's very standard, and there's good reasons for that. It makes sense because that's typically the amount of flexibility you have to locate a site. And so in the materials I provided, I want to just take you through kind of some of the basic analysis that we undertook, which is our site is located on the Tealtown Ball Fields property. As you saw from the photographs from Mr. McCormick, it has very substantial tree cover. And while it is zoned residential, zoned R1, and I appreciate that being corrected in the presentation, it's not PD, it's R1. And that's important for our analysis here tonight. It was selected in part because while it's zoned R1, it's not used. as R1. If it was zoned as a recreational facility, it would meet all of the standards relative to its distance from a residential structure and being the least exacting zoning district, et cetera, et cetera. But in our search area, there are only land use districts that permit, or excuse me, that permit residential uses. And so we selected this for the tree cover, for the large parcel. It's a 49-acre parcel. You see that our closest neighboring use is some type of a home occupation or business use that's in the rear of one of the dwellings of the neighborhood to our west. And even that facility is 440 feet from where the tower is located. There's no home closer than 980 feet from our proposed facility. If you go to slide number 2, or presentation item number 2, that shows our search area in relation to the zoning classifications that we had to select from. My reading of the PD district was that it permitted residential district and nature preserve. One of the specific criteria for conditional use is that we cannot locate in an area where we would unduly affect a scenic or natural area. And so we thought that was automatically disqualified. I realize that there might be an array of uses that could be permitted in a PD district, but those are specifically crafted for that unique district, and this one simply does not permit commercial or industrial uses in the nature preserve. So we had to choose from an R1 classification, and the R1 classification property we chose is one that is not used for a dwelling, which is part of the reason why we thought it made it ideal. We can kind of skip past number 3, which is the photos of the site. I think Mr. McCormick's presentation was very good as far as showing the very extensive buffering surrounding the site, which is very key to us meeting the findings for a conditional use. I also include behind tab number 4 the site plan itself. It lays out very nicely, taking advantage of the existing hardscape that already exists to be able to travel back to the site. With regard to the findings that relate to impact on public services and transportation, you all know from handling these other petitions in the past, but just to reiterate for the record, these generate really 1 to 2 maintenance calls per month. So we'd have 1 maintenance technician in a truck that would show up. There's no burden on traffic. They don't create odor. They don't create noise. And in this particular instance, we have our initial FAA approval, and there's no requirement for it to be lit, which is also a very important factor in making sure that this has no adverse impacts on adjoining property owners. I also wanted to show our base, what we call our base station, where we have adequate space to allow for the radio equipment for Verizon, who's our carrier, as well as for additional carriers, and to show examples of how those could be laid out. We're proposing to have a wood fence around the perimeter, and we're also meeting the landscaping requirements in your code for screening the actual ground level improvements. One of the things we asked when we were working with Mr. McCormick to try to zero in more on identifying the need, and I will say, I want to say for the record, the amount of radio frequency data that we've provided in this instance is far above what we would typically be asked to provide. But Verizon did that willingly because they want to remove any question about whether they need this site or not. They definitely do. It's the result of customer feedback. And it's important to understand that it really serves 2 purposes. And I think I can clarify maybe some of the confusion surrounding the coverage maps, which is that in the handout behind item number 6, this is talking about the expansion where this yellow is. This is depicting the expansion in the geographic coverage by adding this site. So there would actually be additional coverage to the geography in and around this location by adding this new infrastructure to the property. And yes, it depicts it by showing in-vehicle coverage, but of course, if you're in vehicle, then you've also got outdoor coverage in those same areas. That's just a way of graphically depicting where the coverage propagates, is by showing that yellow slide. And it does cover transportation arteries like US 50, but also population areas that are in and around that same vicinity. So what you see behind tab 6 is our current coverage and our improved, significantly improved, predicted new coverage. And then we weren't required to show all of the sites within 1.5 miles, but we did, and here's why. It's a very, very important aspect of this case, and it's why this proposal benefits broader areas within Union Township, is that by showing the additional tower locations around our site, even outside of 1.5 miles, we show the existing kind of orange sites that you see like along 32, along 75, along 50. We show all those, but then show, in addition, where our existing network locations are. And those are the white dot with the black pin mark kind of on the inside of it. Because, and here's why that's important, is because the other part of this case is that it's adding capacity. And so when you saw that green map in our RF memo, which in my experience, I've been doing this since the Telecommunications Act was passed. What that's showing is that this area in green is showing where it can add capacity, and it's showing it because this is how it's going to interrelate to these other sites. It's not too close to these sites to where it interferes, but it's close enough to add backlog and capacity so that a user's signal can be handed off seamlessly to this site. And that's critical because that's what's going to provide relief from the either calls that are not able to be placed or calls that are being blocked for people who are, we cite the elementary school, in and around the elementary school, in and around the shopping center, areas further south in the township. So it's not just the coverage, but it's that additional capacity. And I can just say for the record, those two components, that is the service gap that we're seeking to remedy. If we didn't have the profound difficulty with both the coverage and that capacity, we wouldn't be here. We'd be somewhere else addressing a more pressing problem. But this is a pressing need, and those pictures graphically depict that in a way that is a very robust presentation of our service need. I also wanted to show, just because this is an example, you know it, but I wanted to show, this is a monopole. The code locally requires a monopole. And that's an important distinction because it's not, I've driven around the area quite a bit. There are many monopoles in the area which look very good in my opinion. There are also some others that are up around the highways that are more lattice. I've even seen some guide structures that are less, more obtrusive. They show up more in the background. This is just a cylindrical pole, not unlike my pin. It tapers towards the top, and they're built to withstand a great deal of force and adverse weather conditions. Some of the stories that are coming out of North Carolina, Virginia, where Steve just slept in his car a couple nights, helping with some projects out there. One of the things that wireless industry has been very good at is building resilient networks that are there when people need to call for help. And that's exactly why we're here trying to build this kind of redundancy. And yet you might have seen in a letter that we sent into to the staff that 80% of 911 calls are made on a wireless phone. And I can assure you the stories that are coming in from news outlets all over the country relative to what's happening in Western North Carolina are that folks are using their wireless communications to call for help. That's how they're seeking the first responders. That's how they're letting people know where they are. And it's a great story about why we're doing this and why, frankly, why this is needed here. Now, there's some other points I wanted to mention that because I think they're really critical to your findings, which is we believe that we meet each and every one of the conditional use application standards, including that this is the only technically feasible location that is available to us. There are no technically feasible locations that are outside of a residentially zoned district that are available to us. I know Mr. McCormick showed industrial properties further north of us, but those are well outside the half-mile search radius that's been identified by our radio frequency engineer. And we have sites further north that we're seeking to avoid interfering with those locations. We're doing the monopole, like we mentioned, and and we've also demonstrated, I think this is very clear, that there are no other available tall structures to locate. Arcadia is an infrastructure company. They provide co-location. That's what all the carriers are doing now, is they basically share infrastructure. They have built-in standard agreements for doing it, and this tower will be available for that same shared infrastructure. So we believe we meet each one of the standards. With regard to the variance, a conditional use, allows a tower up to 150 feet. And what we provided in our additional evidence is that because of the varying terrain in the area that we're seeking to serve, and because of the heights of the other facilities in our network, that we needed the taller facility in order to make it functional. And why it takes a little bit of pulling a thread through to kind of understand how this works in the wireless context. But it is a hardship when we identify a property that's in that half-mile search area, that has the requisite elevation, that is an appropriate distance from the other surrounding network. That's what makes this site unique. Where those other sites are located are themselves established because they were unique. They were around major transportation corridors, they're around population centers, they're around where people shop. They themselves have the requisite elevation, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is fit that site into a pre-existing puzzle. And that pre-existing puzzle of sites that we've created is a function of factors completely out of our control. Where roads go, where people live, where people travel, and the elevation and characteristics of those individual properties. We also think this property, that the staff report does not speak to this. It speaks more to things relating to radio frequency, which are not actually in your ordinance. But what is in your ordinance is about what's unique about the character of the site. This site is 49 acres in size. That provides for great separation between this use and surrounding uses, residential or otherwise. In addition to that, it's equipped with a substantial tree cover. We have the luxury of having perimeter trees around the entire site that obstructs the view of the property. They're mature trees, they're dense, and they're tall. It works very well to make the site work. And that is the critical land use aspect of this case, both with regard to making your findings relative to a conditional use, and also with regard to the screening of the property. The other item of evidence we provided, and I should have started off by thanking you for the additional time you gave us, because we did appreciate that. We worked with Mr. McCormick on other sites, including in Dearborn County, Indiana, which does have ordinance provisions relating to specific requirements for radio frequency data, which are not in the ordinance here. And I don't think they particularly add much, but they're in Dearborn County, such as it is. We did have, what that additional time allowed us to do was talk to some of the neighbors. They're not happy about having a cell tower that they can see. I understand that. It's not, we've heard that before, and we've always tried to be respectful about their concerns, but at the same time explain why it's necessary. I understand there were also recent objections to the extension of public utilities into the area. I think even by the township, or at least another utility provider. This is that same kind of critical infrastructure. They may say their phone works fine, but that doesn't mean that everybody else's phone works. And that's part of living in a civil society. Because I may be healthy and don't need a cardiologist doesn't mean nobody else needs a cardiologist. And the same is true for having a tower. We also just think that this has been responsibly chosen. I provided evidence about the impacts on property values. There's both a national study in here, which just concludes that it compares the value of homes that are in proximity to a cell tower to ones that are not in proximity. And I did the same thing for neighborhoods in and around where I'm from, using the same methodology. And what you find out is that there's no material impact on property values because of how close you live to a cell tower. There are other factors that affect property values, like the quality of your schools, cost of living, amenities, things of that nature. But public infrastructure, or infrastructure that serves the public, does not have a material impact. And I know people always say, oh, it's going to have a big impact, and I know that if one individual purchaser may say that, but the data, the actual data that exists, showing that's based on sales data, does not support that. And one of the things I also wanted to show, I always like it, is that we have in the very back of the tab number 3, we show a neighborhood in Hendricks County, Indiana. And the first picture is the aerial photograph that shows the tower location as things exist today. And the picture behind that shows the aerial from 1999 where the tower's there, but none of the homes were there. And what I think that demonstrates is that it doesn't have even a negative impact as far as future development. People build right around the tower and driving here and in and around here. We have existing towers that are on the same or adjacent parcels with residential properties. It does not impact, adversely impact property values based on the actual evidence. We feel like we've done a responsible job identifying this site, that we meet each one of the criteria, and would very much appreciate your approval so that Verizon can get, that Arcadia can get busy for Verizon to help satisfy their gap in service. And we believe we've done that in the least obtrusive means that's available to us. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak for?
Well, I have some questions,
Oh, okay, sure.
if that'd be okay.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for the thoroughness of your work. It could be my ignorance. It appears you've gone above and beyond, but that's just my opinion. My questions may appear to be a little leading, okay? All right.
It's okay.
They would only appear that way because they are. Here's the thing that most captured my attention in all of this, and what I'm most concerned about is this potentiality of 911 calls not going through. I've got a dad with 3 blockages that can't be operated on. It's just a matter of time. But I can tell you this, I would rather be able to make a phone call in this area and get help to him or get to him. I don't care what that tower looks like. If it's going to get me there and it's going to get help to him, that seems to be of great importance. It seems to me you have not just a business responsibility here, it seems you have an ethical responsibility to make sure that your customers can get what they need. Okay? That really wasn't a question, was it? You see what I'm doing here? I'm trying to get us to think a little bit broader here and maybe consider some things beyond just our personal whatever thing is. because there are bigger issues, and sometimes those issues are life and death, and we might want to consider that when we make this decision, is my only point here. But I will give a question then, since I kind of indicated I would ask one. Do we have any actual, do we have a number? See, we were based here, it says if 100 911 calls were made. Well, do we have any within this area that we're talking about? Do we know at present the number of 911 calls being made in that area? I bet we don't know, do we? No, we don't know. We have this 100 here, which I don't know if this makes it seem more dire than it really is or not, right? I don't know. But that might be worth finding out. The other question is, and I don't know if you can answer this, I don't know if this puts you in a bad situation or not. If 150 feet is all you would get, if that is all that would be allowed, would the tower then be a no-go and it's not going to get built? Or maybe you don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious. Is that a deal breaker? What? I know it's not a deal sweetener, okay?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I would answer it this way, I have the luxury of saying that is a question above my pay grade.
yep,
So individuals at Verizon would have to make that decision. All I know is that the testimony that they're submitting to a public body, and I've taken an oath, which I very much intend to honor, indicates that they need the 195-foot tower, the 4-foot
From the
lightning rod.
The engineering.
Yeah, and it seems cogent to me in the explanation of why, based on the topography of the adjoining sites, and I come from a flat part of Indiana. You got a lot more topography here. So when they describe that topography and the variations between the mall and points north, I get it. It looks like that's real.
Would you guys entertain, I know you got it to where you could cohabitate with a couple other services. In the fence that you have there now, and if you look at your sections through there, some of that equipment is above the fence line. And so I guess my question is, I got two of them. Would you entertain increasing the height of that fence? And then also the shrubbery, the greenery, evergreens, increase the count of the greenery around that? And also to the neighbors, if you would increase maybe, some greenery along that, evergreens along that property lines over there. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, and just, can you repeat that last point? I was a
No,
little
that's
behind
fine.
you there.
If there's any houses, I'm just
Yep,
increase like some of the evergreens, say along that road that would lead back in there, that
Oh,
would shield that,
I got you.
at least the lower part. I mean,
I got you.
most people don't walk around just looking at the sky, well, some people do.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, and then shielding that enclosure, and also in raising that fence up, so you're not looking at like it's half done. Is that possible?
It is.
I mean, it's you guys really,
Excuse me, Steve Carr, 2894 Aldersgate Drive.
you there you go, swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Appreciate it.
Basically, those arborvitaes that we would plant around it, pretty fast-growing tree. And the level of tree cover is pretty amazing. But if you feel that an additional tree cover along an existing canopy tree would provide additional screenage, we'd be open to looking at the count and where you would want them to be. Because you're going to have a lot of existing shade that occurs from that existing tree cover. Which
But
would,
if you look at the size of those that you proposed, I mean, it's gonna take a few years before they.
yeah, they come in probably about 4 feet tall.
Yeah, and I mean,
We can put taller in the beginning, if that's what you guys want, to have a taller, maybe a 6-foot arborvitae. We could put something in taller.
And I think, Steve, I think what he's also getting at is, if you look at the line of sight, like on the southwest,
Yes.
if you're going north, yeah, it's very dense, and even, you're very far away the other way. But on that other face in particular.
Yeah, I mean, we could add additional trees in that area.
Okay. I was just asking a question. In the fence height, any problem with that?
If you want to go 8 foot,
What are we showing right now, 6?
6, that's what the code asks for.
Yeah. Okay. You answered my question.
No, in a little bit, we'll hear what maybe opposition is, so I may need you to come back to get some clarification, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. May I ask a couple of questions?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
First of all, point of interest, Counselor, I'm a retired police officer, and this is the first time I've got to ask questions of an attorney.
Okay.
Okay, first question. Looking at your document here on values, I noticed here you have assessed values. That's not sale value, is that correct?
In Indiana, it's based on market value, which is a reported sale value in the sales disclosure document. So,
Assessed values usually go along with the tax thing, and,
yeah.
okay.
It's the closest I had that was like publicly available, and it's supposed to be, I respect what you're saying, it's supposed to be based on a sales disclosure form to report market values, and the assessor's supposed to use that to
Well,
to
they
trend
like
it.
to assess things high so they can get taxes up.
Yeah.
That was my first question. Second question, you have a photograph of the tower back here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the height of this particular tower that's showing in a photograph? I'm going to make an assumption, 150 feet?
Yeah, it's probably, I wouldn't say it's taller than 170. I find it very hard to tell the difference, unless it's like sitting right next to like a high-tension power line or something where I can kind of equate it. Usually you don't see, anything over 250 or anything that's a monopole. So yeah, it's probably 150, 170 in that range.
So the one that you're proposing would be another 49 feet higher than this one.
The tower would be, assuming that's 150, yeah, it'd be 45 feet.
45 feet.
Yep, yep. And this is on a very elegant horse farm, not far from where I live, and I can assure you has not affected property values for that property owner. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anybody here that would like to speak in opposition?
Do I have to swear into?
State
Yes.
your name and address and
Nancy Atkins, 1292 Baldwin Road, Milford, Ohio, 45150.
Could you pull the mic down a little bit for you?
Sure. My voice is a little raspy, I'm sorry.
that's all right. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My truth. Everybody's got a truth, right, anymore? Everybody's got their own truth. That's the way it goes in this world. My truth is God's truth, and that's what I'm giving you. But anyway, I just want to make a statement first. The guy that's a contact on this thing, he's pretty evasive. He don't live, well, he appears not to live where his address is, because it's not in his name, so you kind of like, that's kind of funny, because it belongs to house.
Excuse me one second. Repeat that if you would.
Well, the guy that is our contact for you guys to contact, Bobby Tominski,
The manager of the ballpark, I'm assuming, right?
he's part of the boosters, I'm assuming, but the address he gives you doesn't belong to him, it belongs to Betty Klepper. Now, I don't know if he lives there, if he doesn't live there, I have no idea. So I don't know, and of course, we all know this is a money thing, as far as we're concerned, it's a money thing for this guy. But I'm going to try and keep to the basics here, if I can. But I'd like to know, because I've looked at these two closest towers, they say don't meet their coverage objective. Why can't they replace those existing towers? Is that a big money, that's too much money to do that, I guess? Replace the existing towers with bigger towers? And put them where the growth really is in the county or the Union Township? There's no growth in this area that they're talking about. So why can't they put this bigger tower where these existing towers are, take them down, put up a bigger one. They say they can't add to them because it doesn't, there's no room, they can't add to them. But can they not remove one and put one where the growth area is? You know, they don't do it because it's money, more money. I've talked to people that I was told, and I know Mark said he talked to someone at the nature center, but when I talked to them, someone told me they offered them a spot, and they didn't want it. And I feel like they don't want that spot if it was offered, like I was told, because I also talked accidentally to another gentleman when all the Verizon stuff was going on. We was at Verizon, you know how everybody's running to Verizon, find out what's going on. And this gentleman actually was in the parking lot when we were going out. And I said, well, they can't help you because, you know, it's down nationwide, they say, so we don't know. So he just got back in his truck. So we got to talking a little bit, and he told me, he said, well, I offered him a spot on my land. And he said they wouldn't do it because they have to build a road back to it. So it's all about money, you know, that's why they were picking this spot, because you can see it's already set up. They don't have to do anything hardly to put that tower there. And yes, that's a very unique area. He said unique, it is. Those trees, you know, the pictures aren't very good that you're showing from down Baldwin, how close this tower will be. I know he's given you dimensions, but you realize that's a small house distance. That's not a lot. But those people, us that live on Baldwin, and those tree lines you see down through there, those houses were bought, for most of those people are older, because the nature center's right there. It's just like you're in the country. We see nothing. You don't think we're not going to see that big tower up there? You say you're talking about putting the higher trees? That's a joke. It really is, sir, I'm sorry. But those trees are probably, what, 100 foot high? 100? I don't know how high they are. Huh? Yeah, I mean, they're tall. So we don't care what they put around the bottom, because we could care less on our road. All down that road, if you go down Baldwin, if you've never been down Baldwin, you should take a trip. But, because we won't even see that. All we're going to see is from the top of those trees up, which is another, I don't know, how many feet would that be? Another 100 feet? That's all we're going to see. Yeah, 120 feet above the trees. That's what we'll see. We don't care what they put around the bottom of it, as far as our street goes now. Now, I know there's people on Teal Town that's very upset, too, that's so close to them. We have a neighbor. Our houses are like here on Baldwin, and then we have a long driveway, and there's houses behind us. Those houses are right on that ball field. And, you know, some of them aren't here tonight, I think because everybody's give up. But I'm still trying to fight a little bit, which probably won't mean none. But, and when you talk about the maps, those maps, of course, I don't read them very well, but I know you said 2 of them didn't match. And the service gap, I don't know of any of us that have trouble with our service till that outage thing went on. You know, we've not had any trouble with our service. I mean, it don't make sense. They say there's a gap. Well, I think why don't they put that where the growth is? Like I said, put it where the growth is. And why not the nature center? If they say they offered it, I don't know who Mark talked to, the person I talked to, I don't know. I'm just going by what I was told, you know. And if it's all about a money issue, because they've got to build a road, you know, to get back somewhere. But if it's away from people, why not? You know, they're not concerned about our neighborhood or what we have, you know, nobody cares. And I was trying to read, I made some notes when he was talking. Let me see if I can. Just like, they talk about property values. I've called realtors, I've called appraisers, local ones trying to get ideas, because I think this gentleman back here had printed off some stuff from last time when it was taught, but it wasn't around here. It was in Michigan, different places. What he said showed it, they were saying it does, your property value will diminish. But I actually did call some realtors here, and they said they couldn't really tell you if it would. It's sort of like anything else, you know, you don't know, it's the person, what they'll want, what they'll put up with, or what they'll, you know, just like we have a pool. Some people wouldn't want a pool, and some people do want a pool. But for the most part, I think if you're buying a house, I don't know how you all feel, but would you want that in your backyard, really? Our neighbors back here, they just bought their house a couple of years ago next to us. They refused to even look at a house because it had a tower in it, you know, the first one. They loved it. They said they absolutely loved it. But still, when they saw that tower, it's a no-go. Now, it might not hinder your value, but it's going to hinder the selling time. I'm telling you, it will. People will see that, and then you'll have to, find another buyer, till you finally find somebody who don't care. It'll cause you to have trouble selling your house, time-wise. And let me see. It always amazes me how people want stuff in there. But if you ask a lot of people, they wouldn't want that in their neighborhood. Why can't where the growth is happening, where all the houses are going to be built, all the communities is going to be built, why can't a builder give them a spot there and let them put a tower there? It's because they won't sell their houses, that's why. They don't going to let them do that, because then they'll have trouble selling their houses. I'm sorry. But I do have other questions when he was talking too. When he was talking about the RF capacity and service gap, and he said something about, I don't know if I remember, but I was going to ask, can he supply that info on how many calls they've gotten? Can he really prove how many calls they have received about complaining about not getting, service or having dropped lines? Can he really prove that? Or is there no real hard facts that he can prove how many calls they've actually received? And he mentioned a business there on was that on Town, or where was that business? Do you remember that question? He said something about in that area he only saw there was a business there.
The one right there.
The house, the businesses next to our site.
Okay, what business was that?
I don't know.
I think he's talking about this right here.
I mean, what is it? Is that what business is that guy? Is that the one that does the metal thing?
Off of Teal.
Only business I know around there is Siler's Drive.
That house off of Teal Lane, right? Yeah.
It's got like some industrial application.
Well, there's a guy there that used to do, oh, come on, what Jerry does. Metal. Huh? It's not him? Well, what is this business then?
Anyway, ma'am,
We're not aware of a business there. I'm sorry, we're not aware of a business there. So that's what I was trying to get, where he's getting this business at.
When I went back and looked at the site, I actually drove into that lot where that it is a business
What is
of
it?
some sort. I don't know, but I drove into there a
Yeah.
few weeks ago.
Because I knew there was a gentleman that did some kind of welding or something, I thought, back there for a while, but I don't. So I just thought, but it's a neighborhood that's just nothing other than most neighborhoods. It talks about, let me see, get my notes here straight. Let me see. I've tried to spend a lot of time reading this stuff, and then I get nervous, and it's like, oh.
take your time.
Oh, when he was showing you where the houses were being built around a tower, that, when he just showed you that, and they got this and they're building around the tower, but you don't know how cheap they bought that land from. Sometimes it's all about the price. How much maybe they got that land real cheap because that tower was there? I mean, can you say that? How much they paid for that land when they built their houses?
Ma'am, speak up here.
I'm sorry. But, I mean, that's the difference too. We might, not saying we couldn't sell our houses, but we might sell them cheaper, just like they may have sold this land cheaper for people to build on. And nowadays, sometimes that's what it's all about. If I go shopping, it's all about the price, right? If it's too much, I'm not gonna buy it. But so I would say that's not a good example, people building around a tower, because they may have got a really cheap dirt price on the land, so they built cheap. You don't know that. So that's not a good argument, I don't feel like, for not devaluing your house. People are gonna build no matter what. That's not true. It's all about the money. And like I said, our homes where we're at have been it's a very, very quiet, serene area. And now they're going to put this tower in, and that's just going to be 100 feet above the trees back there. And it shows like he said, oh, there's a big tree line back there when he was showing it. I don't know how wide it is actually, but I know our children used to walk back through there to go to the ball fields. Can't be too wide, I don't guess. But I don't know. I don't think any of his figures are right. I don't think some of them, you can look at them different ways. But, I think they could build it somewhere else. They just don't want to. They could take down the other ones and put up a bigger one somewhere else that's needed more. You know, and they don't want to because it's gonna cost them more money. It's just gonna cost them more money to do it someplace else, that's all. I don't know what else to say. I think this was my stuff here too.
I have a couple questions for you, if that's
Sure.
okay. I am a Realtor, and you are right. There are a lot of factors go into whether a house sells or not. No one likes the power lines running in their backyard,
Well, we have none,
but we all love having electricity.
yeah.
My only point is, to enjoy the conveniences that we have of modern life.
To us, that's not a convenience. We're almost considering
comes a
getting rid
trade-off.
of our cell phones.
So, now, are you a Verizon customer by
Yeah,
chance? Yes? And you're having fine service as
We're
far
having
as you
fine
know?
service till that outage thing.
Yeah.
And then we actually wondered if they didn't do it on purpose.
Okay.
Before we knew it was more than
Well,
us.
we're gonna do our best to stick to what we can know.
Yeah,
Lots of speculation can be
Yeah, I
made.
know.
And so we're trying to do that. Now you're gonna think I'm trying to be funny here, and I'm not. If that tower was invisible, would you have a problem with it being there?
invisible? No.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to get to the heart of what we're really, the main concern
It's the
is-
aesthetics of
And
it.
it's the aesthetics,
Aesthetics,
right?
yes.
That's what it, that's, it. Okay. I wanted to make sure, I thought that was right, but I wanted to make sure that I understood that. There's not any other concern really about
Nothing that I
it.
can prove, nothing that's
Okay,
provable,
okay,
probably.
yeah, okay,
You know, you can
okay.
read stuff about it's not
Right.
good for you, and it's not good for this, not. but
Right,
That's a
okay.
matter of opinion too, seems to
Yeah.
be, so.
That's right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Because I know for me, it is, and for a lot of our people down there, it's just gonna ruin your whole serenity of the neighborhood, you know, because we go out and sit in the back and we don't hear, you don't hear a thing. And you just sit, it's just beautiful. And first thing I wake up in the morning, because we have doors in the back of our bedroom, glass doors, first thing I see, that's what I'm gonna see now is that tower. First thing I open my eyes, I'm gonna see that tower. And it's just sad that you're taking a beautiful neighborhood like this and sticking a tower back there. And I can tell you, I can almost bet my life on that, he's talking about, you know, growth and stuff. There's nature center there, most of this is farmlands back there that people have owned for a long time. There's not gonna be any builders back in this, or the area where we are, building houses, I don't believe anybody's selling it. Unless the ball guy does, and because he seems to be greedy. But unless he wants to sell the ballpark and build houses there, I don't think there'll be any building anywhere around there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else in opposition? Perfect. Isn't that the truth? Thank you. If you would, name, address,
Albert Berger, 1342 Baldwin.
all right, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God.
Appreciate it.
A couple of questions for the board. With all of this said, you know, we're talking about property values, things like that. Will the board be verifying for the residents any effect on value? Will you guys be doing that for us? Helping us in that manner? Or is it just,
I would say.
we're on our own?
I can't answer that question.
Okay?
So I just want to be clear. You're asking, are we going to do an analysis of the area to determine what the property values are now? And then, 'cause
At least something that we can take home to our families, if you will, that, okay, if this infrastructure is built in the community, then should the residents expect to see some effect on the value of their property? I ask because My wife and I are thinking about maybe moving in the not-too-distant future. So, as you said, variables, things like that, that is one thing to consider if we're thinking about moving.
Yeah, there are in fact too many variables to be able to isolate it to that one item and give a definitive predictive future. It's not possible.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so unfortunately.
You
I
understand the
wish-
concern,
Yeah, I can understand the concern,
though? Okay.
but
And with-
because, as you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Sure.
And
And when, maybe you do know this, answer to this question, though. When the county assesses property values, because we always love that, will such a structure be taken into consideration? And does the county view that as an asset towards those neighboring properties? And would the value of those properties be affected from that point of view? You know, kind of bottom lining
I
it.
see what
Should
you're
I
at.
expect
Yeah,
to pay
yeah.
more
Yeah, I
property
understand what
taxes
you're
because of
asking.
this? Right.
Of course, the answer to that is beyond the purview of this
Right.
group.
But it's
But-
something
but-
that
But it
we
is something
need to
that would
take into
be
consideration.
interesting. Yeah, if I were you, I would want to know and would endeavor to find that out. Unfortunately, this board, we don't have access, nor would we be allowed to speak to that. We would be the wrong people to give you an answer on that.
But to, how do I want to word this? So then, for you to properly rule on this question, you want to take residents' effects into consideration, right? And so you wouldn't have to specifically find out details as far as numbers and actual
Right.
properties, but at least find out if the county is going to treat it as an asset so that we can fit that into our budgets.
Right.
Because some of us on Baldwin are retired or on the quote-unquote fixed income, you know, and so if that's going to affect our property taxes, of course, the board would not be able to know dollars and cents. I get that.
right.
But at least take that into consideration as, you know, something to think about.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I know I'm not wording it
And-
properly, but I
no,
think
no.
you see where I'm going.
No, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
And I've probably said this, I think maybe in our last 3 meetings. This board, our guiding principle is to make decisions regarding hardships as related to land and the use of it. So we do not have as much latitude as people think we do. We listen to the public. We do care about what people think.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's nothing in our book that gives us a mechanism for gauging how does it affect other people other than light, quality of air. But primarily what we have to look at is the actual site, what is allowed to go there, and does that site present a hardship based on what is going on there. Now, that does lead us then to ask whether or not what is going in there should be there in the first place. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think folks think we have greater latitude as to what we can consider as the criteria for our decision than we actually do.
Now, when you say hardship, what does that mean?
Well, as was described, and I think you wouldn't have this, but in the staff notes, we have it says, the granting of the variance is necessary for a reasonable use of land or building. So this is the question. and the variance granted is the minimum to accomplish the purpose. Okay, so we have the stated purpose, right? And so what we have to do then is decide, is what's being proposed, and obviously we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't outside what's
Sure,
written,
sure.
right? We wouldn't be here,
Right.
right? You wouldn't even get to have a choice about it. If this thing were 150 feet, we wouldn't even be talking,
Okay,
right? We'd be a done deal and this thing could be done, which was why my question earlier, if it can only be 150 feet, I'm not stupid. I have reasons for what I ask questions. And so what we have to judge tonight, and I'm kind of wondering if we're going to be able to judge anything tonight, is whether or not what is being said needs to be done because of the land. Is that true because there are indeed no other options for other land? See what I'm saying? So we've got to nail that down. There's a lot here, I believe, what I've read, but our gentlelady earlier had a question that we're going to recourse on here in a minute in regards to that. You know, we'll talk a little bit more here about other sites, and I think I know the answer, but I don't want to assume. And then, you know, we're still muddling through the process here. A decision hasn't been made. We didn't come to this meeting tonight already knowing what we're going to do. We came with a bunch of questions, and we're still trying to figure it out.
right.
Okay.
And so just to wrap up that, so when we say something like hardships, we're talking about the property itself and who's submitting
Yeah.
the
you know,
request for the
is-
variance.
Right, like,
Okay.
if there was another piece of land that would accomplish everything and there would be no complaints about it, then there wouldn't be a hardship on this piece of land.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So we gotta find that out.
Exactly, okay,
Right.
okay. Yeah, because, no, I think, you know, just that the residents in the area and how it affects them needs to be considered as well. And to the earlier point that, yes, if we have 80-foot trees, yeah, from my house on Baldwin, I can see those 4 fields where the site label is on that, that image. And so I can see those fields. I'm definitely going to be able to see that tower. And so from a saleability standpoint, does that negatively affect me and my wife if we do decide to move?
And,
So,
and it's,
and that's all,
and it's
I get
almost,
it, I get it.
It's near impossible to
I know.
prove either way.
Just want to put it all
Yeah,
in
no,
your heads.
no, I appreciate it,
though,
though.
all right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well,
Anyone else to speak?
is anybody else?
I just have a question. I was surprised when I looked that up,
Okay, I'm sorry,
Maybe
let's
get-
get forward, because we need everything on the record. And
I was surprised when I did look at, I didn't know, because, you know, that's a tax exempt, he's tax exempt. That property doesn't pay real estate taxes or anything. So, I mean, because it's charity. I don't know what it's
Okay.
listed as, charity.
yeah,
But I
it
think-
may be.
So he's
It
just.
would be beyond our
And I
ability
guess
to
he's a
have an opinion
nonprofit,
about it.
you know, or something, so he's
Yeah.
just making money, and we're gonna be possibly, I didn't think about taxes going up, because I don't look at it as an asset at all. But if it goes up, then we're really messed up.
Yes, ma'am.
Taxes are high enough, we just barely squeeze by now.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else in opposition?
Yes, ma'am.
You can, oh, you have your form? by chance?
Oh, I just want to refer to this, it's not my form. I didn't fill one out, I didn't plan on talking. I just wanted to make it
Okay, well, we
quick.
can get one in
Yeah, later.
later, afterwards. Make sure you go back there and fill out the little
Okay,
form
yeah, I
that's
didn't
back there.
plan on saying
Just
this,
state your
but-
name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jeannie Andrus. My husband and Mike and I live at 1296 Baldwin. I totally agree with everything Albert and
I
Nancy
just, we just
said.
need to swear you in.
Oh,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a couple things to what they said. One little thing is, our property value was raised $70,000 this year, and now you're doing this. I know you say none of this matters and our values don't matter and what it decreases. I just see some irony in that. That 70,000, I don't know how much our taxes have gone up. And now this. But the main thing I just wanted to add to everything my neighbors have said is it looks to me on the staff comments that you supplied, number 2, B and C, specifically, especially C, it says an application shall be disapproved unless the applicant demonstrates that, on and on, you can read it. Shall, that's a strong word. That's not may, shall. He has not. He stated himself. They never asked the Nature Center. There's some question as to whether the Nature Center, you said you've never contacted the Nature Center.
We'll redress. We'll
Isn't that
redress.
correct?
Well,
That you never reached out?
no,
So you reached out to the Nature Center?
ma'am, we.
All right,
I'm
but that's
sorry.
all I want to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says
We
shall.
just have to keep the
I don't know
communication
that
this
there's
way.
a choice,
Okay.
Thank you.
unless he has proven that he's contacted them, which it sounds like.
Thanks. Is there anybody else in opposition? Oh, don't forget the form, man. Thanks. Mr. Nolan?
Yep.
Address?
4756 Teal Town Road.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess like others said, my main concern is my 11-year-old son, I just bought him a telescope for Christmas. He's really into astronomy. That's where our viewership is. I mean, we sit on the backyard and we look out and we watch stars all the time. I don't know how, I mean, like when they have the game and the lights are on, there's no star watching. I'm just wondering how this tower is going to affect our ability just to enjoy our property the way we do now. It's like, it's going to be way, way up. Even, I mean, the light towers, I think, are about 80 feet they have back there now, which, you know, that's part of the ball field. That's what they need to operate. And we've had a good relationship with the ball field. We, you know, all the cheering and all the lights and the traffic excess, it's been a good thing. But my main question is I know the company is going to be leasing the tower, or leasing the property. And what would happen if the ball field would fail? Because I know that's why, you know, they're looking out for this anyway. Their bathrooms have been broken for 3 years. They don't have the money to fix it. Their parking lot is pretty much gravel now because they can't blacktop it. Kids aren't playing baseball anymore. The customer base is sadly going to video games. And management is not doing anything to try to bring in new revenue sources. They're just trying to, you know, reach out for Hail Marys, basically. It reminds me of the old saying, the drowning man tries to take you with him. It kind of feels like that's what they're doing with the property owners. They're just trying anything they can do to get a revenue stream, regardless of how it affects anyone else, which you can't fault them if they're faltering. You know, they're going to do what they got to do to survive. But my point is if the ball field does get sold, what happens with this lease? How does that take place? I mean, there's a lot of things I'm concerned about long-term, not just, you know, tomorrow. I'm talking 3 years. What happens if, you know, they end up selling it for a subdivision? Is that tower going to be right underneath a bunch of houses at that point? I mean, I know there are questions you can't really answer, but once it's locked in, is it transferable? The lease, is it transferable? Is it like, if the property's sold, can they have to have the tower there to sell the property? Is there a break lease clause in it? There's a lot of questions I have because I know the property is facing hardship. I mean, I'm right next to them. Our fence, it's rotted to nothing. They don't have the money to replace it. It's just, I feel for them. I mean, I understand we need the infrastructure. We need cell phone service, but the maps they provide, 100% coverage. The only thing they're trying to do is increase vehicle coverage. The yellow is vehicle. That's the only thing they're trying to do. The gray is 100% coverage. Their own maps. The other thing I understand saying why they're saying predicted. They know exactly what that is. They know exactly their coverage area. Trust me, that's all their engineers do, tell you exactly every square inch that's covered. The other thing I'd like to point out is the little report that they gave you. There's not a person in this room it's an engineer. We're not qualified to understand any of the numbers in there. And I congratulate the attorney. He did a really, really good presentation. Sounds like he's done it a couple other times at other zoning boards. It's well rehearsed, very good. But my point is why couldn't they bring an expert in here with you to explain with all the radio signals and stuff that they needed to? Seems to me like it's trying to make a quick buck at the expense of a distressed property, and we're going to be affected by it. And that's my main concern. And you guys are basically our HOA. You're there to protect us in the community. That's why I remember when the zoning resolution was written. Oh boy, that was a big one. Everyone was like, oh, you're telling us what to do with our property. And when I was younger, I was the same way. But as I get older and more mature and I acquire more things, I realized the need to have a governing body to protect everyone's interest. And the resolution was written to have things in businesses areas, in industrial areas, stuff in residential areas. I mean, I just think it should be kept in business areas. If not, one other issue I have is the company is from Indianapolis. So heaven forbid there is a problem in the future, and it involves litigation. Look at the can of worms that opens up into suing the company. And I see Arcadia One LLC. How many companies do you have? I guarantee every company, every cell phone tower has a different LLC. That's why they do it, because that way it avoids liability for anything down the road. I mean, that's what they do.
I don't want to cut you short.
That's fine.
But we're getting into areas that are speculation and imagination. We have to stick to just your actual main concern is,
My main concern.
if you had to give it to us in one sentence,
My
what
main
is it?
concern is looking out my back porch, that's all I'm gonna see. I mean,
Yes, sir.
that's exactly where I look, is I'm gonna see 120 foot, 130 foot of tower.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's got lights on it or whatever.
No,
I understand that, like I said, I understand that we need infrastructure. I don't think this is an infrastructure need. I think it's an infrastructure want for profit. It's not, their coverage max shows right there, 100%. The only thing they're trying to do is boost our signal and probably carry more customers because they want to add on more. They want to do more of the, the whole internet you're seeing on TV and stuff and all the other stuff.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
all I got. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well,
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition at all? Anyone? Okay. I would like to give our, an opportunity, if you would come
Counselor?
back, have a few questions. You probably wrote down the main concerns
Yep.
that folks raised.
Yep.
If you want to just go ahead and address those, and then if I think any are missed from my list, then we'll do it that way. It'll probably go quicker that way.
I got a same thing. I think we're on the same. Go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll be as thorough as I can. Just with regard to the Nature Center property, so just to take a step back, when we go into a jurisdiction, we're not looking for a fight. I mean, we're looking for a place, first of all, to go on a tall structure that exists, that's in the search area, and then secondly, we go through the zoning analysis to see where we can find a permitted use site, and we kind of work our way through the decision tree to get to, with the easiest options being the best options. And so the standard in Union Township is that we need to be able to demonstrate that sites are not available in a non-residential district, and there's a double negative here, a non-residential district not within 100 feet of a residential dwelling. And we reviewed the underlying zoning ordinance for the nature preserve, and it had really two strikes against it. One, it permitted residential uses, and two, the general criteria under section 442, 442-2J say will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of a natural, scenic, or historic feature of major importance. And our conclusion was that was a kind of a second strike, that to go into the nature preserve would also likely result in the destruction of natural or scenic features, plus it wasn't an upgrade in terms of being less restrictive. It permitted dwellings as well. So
Just one
we
thing.
didn't think that was a qualified use, so we went to what I think is, and I think it shouldn't be lost in all this discussion, is we have a 49-acre parcel that allows great separation from adjoining uses and has substantial tree cover. It is the least restrictive site available to us.
Is what he just said in regards to the nature preserve, is that your understanding? Is that accurate?
Not with the planned development. So the planned development, some places, jurisdictions will call it a PUD. There is a plan associated with that property. I did not pull it up, but in general, many of our PDs have underlying commercial and industrial or institutional uses assigned to them. So it's not a residential use. I mean, there's a residence or two on the property, but I don't think that they are actually being lived in, or if they are, it's a caretaker residence. But generally speaking, planned developments often have, and there's an allowance for commercial, institutional, industrial types of uses. So it is more forgiving in many instances than the residential classification.
Just to clarify, all I'm saying is that in this particular instance, this was a PD, or correct, a PUD, often in common parlance, to establish a nature preserve. So it was not a PUD to establish a mixed use for commercial and industrial properties. That's what our
Yeah,
research showed.
so that's what I'm trying to clarify here.
So there's more, it's not simply a PD assigned for nature preserve. They have some commercial type of activity. If they were simply just having a nature preserve and there was no other activity, then what he's saying is true, but there was more to it than that, and that's why it went through the PD process.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is that whatever, if you want to call that commercial activity, it's ancillary to the nature preserve. And it permits residential uses. That's why on the hierarchy, it was not I rarely have to argue that a nature preserve is a less restrictive or a less restrictive zoning classification. It's generally considered the most restrictive, and it is here as well.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning your understanding.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to know, is the nature preserve a legitimate option?
That is, they can only answer that, and when I talked to the executive director of the nature preserve, well, it's not even called a preserve, the Cincinnati Nature Center, which, maybe functions in part as a preserve, they more or less, he told me that they would have to take that to their board. And he said, while generally speaking, they may not be in favor of doing such a thing, it would potentially depend on what his board has to say and how much revenue would be involved in this scenario, because they might be able to justify it. But in general terms, he basically said it's probably, more or less, it's kind of like maybe a long shot, but they were never approached this way, he told me.
And just to bring us back to what the standard is.
Right. No.
The standard is not, and it's true both in federal law and in your local law, the standard is not that we have to eliminate any conceivable alternative. The
No.
standard is whether and it's a local standard, is whether there is a suitable and feasible site not in a residential district. And what I'm saying to you is our research said that the permitted use in that district included residential. So it is not a less restrictive zoning classification under the code here locally.
Yeah.
So we went to the one that had the best, equal
Right.
in terms of restriction, but the better opportunity to locate a site. You don't have to disturb any scenic or natural features. It's well screened. It's an R1 zoning designation, but not an R1 use. And that's what we think makes it a common sense thing. If it was easier to go to nature preserve, we would. I can't think of an instance where we've ever done something like that. I don't want to cut that short because I think that's very significant, and I think it goes to the heart of the research and diligence we did when we came here. We're not coming here to waste their time or certainly your time in bringing you a case that doesn't meet the threshold question. I mean, that's the whole reason we're here. And we felt like we had really, in a siting world, located a really ideal site for this type of facility. The other things I noted was, with regard to, could we just replace existing structures? And the problem we have with that is those structures kind of have their own function. There are some limited things you can do to maximize the utility of those existing sites. But as far as providing an opportunity to offload and provide that additional capacity, which is a big feature, simply using the same infrastructure to do that doesn't work. You've got to have somewhere for the signal to go off of that site. So that does that addresses that.
And if it were possible and were cheaper, you'd probably be doing that, wouldn't you?
We would.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I'll give you an example, because it's a great point, is there is the ability in some instances to actually extend a tower, to make it taller. And so sometimes to add a carrier or an existing carrier to add equipment, they'll add on to an existing site. And that's a very good use of capital. It's easier than trying to locate a new site, but it has to allow you to, that's a way to maximize that asset rather than to expand your coverage or expand your capacity.
Okay.
It's just it's a tweak, and you can only go so far with those tweaks. One thing I wanted to mention too about the company, ironically, the company's actually from Milford. And I've had good fortune in representing the company, who I know to be very reputable, honorable people who've done the right thing and are very well thought of in the industry. I'm from Indianapolis, but the company's not from Indianapolis. I agree, I don't have anything to add with regard to the conversations about realtors and property value and the different factors. I think that was a very thorough discussion. I think I heard the testimony that there was a conclusion, I think, made that it wouldn't impact value but could potentially affect, time of selling. Those are all, I think, speculative things, but perhaps that's true. But I think it is, in our experience, these are property value agnostic, meaning that I've not seen property values go up because of a tower. I've not seen them go down because of a tower. I can tell you, I've done hundreds of sites. My phone does not ring, and I've got to know lots of people along the way around those sites. My phone doesn't ring off the hook with people saying, that tower you got approved hurt my property value. I've just never had that. And I think I would if that really was something that's occurring. And I think our booklet and evidence supports that as well. Let's see. I do want to emphasize that, because I do think it's an important factor, is the tower is not externally lit, so there's not going to be a pulsating red light or a pulsating strobe light, anything like that. That's not required. So at night, it should be very much dark skies. My son has a telescope as well, and I don't think this would in any way have any impact on the ability to see stars or constellations, et cetera. With regard to the lease is a document that will go with the land. So if something should happen to the nonprofit, if they went away or the property was sold, the lease would endure. They're making a very significant investment here, and the financial stability of the nonprofit landlord cannot extinguish the asset. It has to go forward. And Verizon can't lose a site because of that. It may help that nonprofit in terms of providing some additional revenue to them, certainly through the lease rentals, but it's meant to continue through the entire lease terms and the extensions, et cetera. Let's see.
How long is you said the lease term?
Yeah.
Is it a 100-year lease, or what?
I'll bring my expert up on the lease terms.
It's a 5-year, Steve Carr, by the way. It's a 5-year lease with 9 5-year extensions, so 50 years.
Okay, thank you.
I won't be around.
Oh, there's a question about, and I did want to address this because it's not trying to be evasive. Typically, each of the carriers view providing specific customer data, like relative to complaints, and even dropped calls or incomplete calls, as proprietary information. And I think there's lots of reasons for that I think even go into some of the security of the network and things that they don't want to divulge. I can tell you though, as far as allocating capital, the capital that's being allocated here and the commitment that Verizon's making to this location financially, they would not be making that allocation unless the data was showing that their customers are complaining and their business could potentially suffer. And to an earlier point made, because I do think this business is uniquely this way in many respects. Maybe not uniquely, there's other businesses that have these same obligations, but there is an ethical component to this business. They operate under an FCC license, and the federal government does place obligations on the carrier to provide the coverage. It's not just, gee, go out there and just do the best you can. It's, you've got to provide that coverage, in part because we're relying on those private carriers to assure that the public has uniform access to the service. And when the Telecommunications Act was passed in 1996, it was a different era in our country. It was a bipartisan bill, widely supported by both parties, and it had to do a lot with encouraging commerce, enhancing public safety, and assuring for our national security. And when we went through the pandemic in 2020, I know I took a lot of pride in it, and I know Steve did too, that our wireless networks got put to the test with schools, with emergency responders, et cetera. And if we had not had that, I've often thought to myself, we didn't have the Telecommunications Act, would we have been able to deal with that? It was tough enough. Would we have been able to deal with it without that infrastructure? So we really needed that, and it was there for us when we needed it. And that's what this is for. It's to provide that resiliency for our network. I know I've probably left some things out, but those are the major highlights I made in my notes, and I appreciate the
You
opportunity.
answered 3 of mine that I already had.
Okay.
You had more?
No,
Oh, he has.
addressed this.
I think I know the answer to this, but it was brought up. There was a concern by a resident in regards to their serenity being broken as a result of sound or noise. This does not emit sound or noise, or does it?
It does not.
Okay.
It's a quiet, it's really, we refer to it commonly as a passive land use. Doesn't generate traffic to speak of, no noise, in this instance, no lights, which is a big factor, and no odor. I have the luxury in my house, I live within 500 feet of a lift station. And I can tell you that I would trade that lift station for a cell tower because it does emit an odor. On a hot summer night where I live, there's some instances where that does have an impact on you. Now, I realize that infrastructure is necessary for the entire community, including myself, but it's one of those things. This is similarly that kind of infrastructure. The good news is, though, is it doesn't create noise or odors or light.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to close it off.
Nope. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Close it
time.
off to the public and
Discussion of the board.
Yeah, discussion of the board.
Well, I'm not in favor of extending the tower to 199 feet, which would be with the 4-foot lightning rod. Come out to 199 feet. I'm not in favor of that.
You're in favor of 150 cap.
150 cap.
I guess from an engineering point of view, if they need that to get what they have to get, then that's what they have to have. Otherwise, it's like they're putting up a tower that isn't going to do what they need. That's how, I mean, if you're looking at it from that perspective. And I get it, and I appreciate that. I think from just a public community service, I think that, I think it's needed. I think that it was, and I think that, during, COVID and all that stuff, I mean, most people worked at home, and I think that most people today, they don't have a landline. I think everything's cell anymore. I mean, everything you do is cell, it seems like. So I think that anything that can enhance the public safety and the service, I think is worth it. I mean, it's just what I'm thinking. I think, and and I really feel, I know what you're saying, where you're at, but it seems like that's the best spot for it if they went there. And as for the nature center, I don't think that would fly. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Well, if they have to go to the board, I'm thinking, it just,
I'm sorry, but
Ma'am.
you're not supposed to talk to the board during the meeting. You had your time at the podium, and I'm sorry, but this is closed discussion.
yeah,
This is
Oh,
closed.
okay.
we're just talking amongst
Everybody
ourselves.
was
Okay,
given
I
their
was just wanna
chance,
make
everybody
one
was
more-
given their chance to speak. If we
Okay.
keep opening it up
It's
for
closed
discussion,
to
we'll
the
be here
public.
all night long.
Discussion's closed to the public.
We all might as well wait, because we know what you're going to decide anyway.
Well, I just think that the nature center in itself, now, I will say they do have commercial activity, because my daughter got married there. So, I mean, they operate that, but it's all about nature kind of stuff. And to throw a cell tower up there, that wouldn't, I could see the board, they're just living, that's just what I'm thinking. So, I don't know,
I think nature center's a mute point.
Anyway, anybody else have any comments? or-
I do have a landline.
Do you have a cell, though?
But I do have a cell phone.
There you go.
And I have so much empathy for both sides here. I own a lot of property, and I also deal in real estate. I get 2 LLCs. And I've sold easements to the city of Cincinnati. And I just, especially with what's going on down in North Carolina, I mean, it just,
Right.
it's one of those things that we all have cell phones, but we don't want the, and I don't want the towers in my backyard either. It's tough.
Huh?
But unfortunately, I think the bottom line is they have to go somewhere.
Yeah. So what's that one till Star whatever comes by, and you guys will probably be out, those guys will be out of business. Star's dead. But anyway. I don't know. Anybody want to make a motion?
Do you have any other thoughts, Mr. Conklin?
No? So, you good?
So as a reminder, we have to have a motion regarding the conditional use, and then you have to have another motion regarding the variance.
Gotcha.
Because there are 2 separate items. One can be approved, the other one cannot be approved theoretically, so we have to address them both.
What you're saying is we could approve the use, but not approve the height.
Yes.
That's
Correct.
essentially what we're
Correct.
coming down to.
If you went
right?
the other way around, for some reason, if you didn't approve the use, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense other than to be thorough to talk about the height. But
Yeah,
yes,
we have to have the first one, or the second one, doesn't matter.
yes,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Either that or
That's-
be skyhook. Floating up there. Well, Mr. Ford, you,
Yeah, I know this is getting put on me, I can tell. Anything else you'd like to say at all? Any advice, any concerns, any?
No, I mean, everything I had was in the staff report. I mean, I honestly really wasn't trying to nitpick any of them. Or, like, I'm not concerned about the applicant's RF mapping or anything else. Really, it's just a matter of, are they able to demonstrate that they're adhering to these criteria or not? And I mean, I engaged in conversations with the applicant prior to the hearing, or prior to the first submittal. I engaged in conversations with them after the last submittal. And the last time we talked, it was still amicable, but it was like they were aggravated at me for asking them for something that, in one way of putting it, was like, you're asking for more than everybody else. Well, I also know who my board is and who I have to report to, and they sat through one of our hearings where, you know, the board was very thorough with another applicant, and I said, that's our board. That's not Mark McCormack as a planner, that's our board. And whether I was working here or not, they were also going to have to go through the zoning process because our administrator was very adamant that they were gonna have to go through the process. So I'm not picking on these guys, but I've tried working with them 3 or 4 times, and I think the process for them would have been a heck of a lot easier if instead of sending the letter from the get-go, they would have come in and talked to us about the site and said, here's what we're wanting to do. And that's not what happened. I think that if they, instead of being defensive, and they would have worked with us on what we were asking them to provide, the last 2 or 3 times I talked to them on the phone and by, Zoom, we would have had the information that we need. And the reason, and I wanted to write a cleaner report, I just couldn't, because the information that was given was all that we were given. And the maps that we were supposed to be getting, supposedly the last 2 months, we never got. So we got no maps, even though we distinctly tabled the issue for 2 months to get maps. And the maps that we have, when you read them, it looks like that you're getting an improvement to in-car capacity. It doesn't look like, the maps are not self-explanatory, and if you read the RF memos and stuff that go with them, they don't say what he just said.
Okay,
So
right.
if you're going by what's written down and what's on the maps, like, it would be a heck of a lot more helpful to have a response like what he presented tonight,
Yes.
and his RF
Okay.
person to give us that information, instead of short shrifting us for the last 3 months.
Okay.
So, You had your chance to speak.
What I wanted to get to is, based on the new information we have.
Right.
Would your report still be written the way it is if you had all of this information?
This new information that we have here tonight is no different than the information that we had previously. The only new thing that we have is this that talks about property value. The only new thing they brought in for the last month was the memo. The only thing they brought in the previous month that was new was this right here.
Mark, we had a public hearing.
We already talked to you. We already talked to you. No, we talked to you. They've been given their chance to explain everything.
understand.
I'm giving you my explanation of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I
talked to
wanted.
them, and they were clearly aggravated with me the last time they talked to me on the phone, and all I was trying to do was help them with my job. It's kind of like the Jerry Maguire thing, help me help you. And they were not helping me help you, and they were not giving us the maps that they said that they were going to give us. They said that we were basically asking for too much information.
Okay.
So I don't really understand why that was the way it was presented, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be in their wheelhouse. When I'm asking them, who is this going to impact? Where's the growing population? Can you define the Teal Town area? None of that happened. None of it. So in the absence of them putting that together on a map, how are we supposed to know who's impacted? Because if you go by the maps that they've provided, it looks like they're trying to address the people that are driving in that area on the site, which is 3,000 to 4,000 people. That's what I have to work with. Again, you're speaking out of turn, you need to be quiet. I did not cut you off one time, you've cut me off many times, it's very rude. So, that's my feeling on it.
Okay.
And I feel like I've done everything, every courtesy to this point to try to work with them. And I'm understandably aggravated because, the way that they dealt with me the last time on the phone, it was like, why are we having this meeting? And then, when we get to the meeting, they drop more information on us, which still isn't answering the things that we were trying to get to in the first place. The maps that we were talking about, we tabled the hearing twice for maps. No maps. There's no reason why we were given as to why the maps weren't created. The only thing we were told is that, we're giving you more information than we give anybody else. We slap this down on the table somewhere else and everybody else accepts it. We are allowed to make our own rules. And we can be more restrictive than the federal government when it comes to certain things, right? So it doesn't matter in some cases what the federal government says, unless they've preempted what we're doing.
So what we're really thinking, it seems like,
And I honestly don't, it doesn't matter to me whether you guys approve the tower or not. I don't disagree that in some regards, like, this is a great tower site for the purposes of trying to keep it hidden from people, and I'm really not trying to pick a fight with them. But at the end of the day, like, they have not made it easy to work with them, and they didn't come to us from the very beginning and talk to us, which would have made the process a whole lot easier. And that is not just the feeling of me, that's the feeling of our entire staff, by the way.
well,
You were about to say.
we gotta do, right hand, left hand. What's the positives? To me, the positives are more comprehensive coverage and more load that they can get to protect the community in a sense like that. That's one, that's big. Then the negative is they haven't provided all the stuff that the townships asked for to make the same at least laid it out. Now, I don't know if that makes, we're sitting here, I don't know, it's more like they didn't do it, but does it really make any difference right now because you have, whether they show a tower or not, or whatever, is it gonna make any difference on this map? But it's the fact of the matter is they didn't provide the information up front for us to, to go through this three-time process sitting here. But, this is what I'm thinking. From a community perspective, and overall, in the big picture of things, it's probably a good idea. But to follow the process, it wasn't done from what I'm hearing. And that's, got people a little upset, everybody. So, I don't know. That's my opinion. Anybody else have one?
Can I ask Mark a
Yep.
question? Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, so if the maps would have been provided, and of course, we don't know what those maps
Right.
look like, would that make it so that it would be easier to make a informed decision? Because we don't know what we don't know.
Right, so could there be maps provided that would help answer some of the things that we were getting at? Potentially. They could have come back to us in the last month or two and said, you know what, we can provide information, but maps aren't the best way to do that. And that's not what's happened till now. And I would accept that answer. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But that's not what's been set up until now. We were told, like, last month, that the person that was supposed to be maybe making the map was out of the office or something.
Okay.
So-
What would the maps answer in regards to whether or not there's a hardship here? That's what I'm trying to understand
So
that.
part of it's not just if there's a hardship, part of it's, did they do the things to select the site the way they were supposed to select it? Like you're looking at the criteria about, did they, for 612, because 612 is not, the items that are in 612 specifically, in Article 6, are not part of Article 4, which gets to the variance and conditional use criteria. These are specific for wireless telecommunications facilities. Applicant must demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that its tower cannot be located in any other communication tower, building, or structure, The application shall be disapproved unless the applicant demonstrates technically suitable and feasible sites are not available, on and on and on. So there's, I did mention, other than the PD, there is an industrial zone that's a half a mile to a mile to the north of the subject property. And it is within that distance. Now, the elevations of that area are a lot lower, so I do understand their point that like, hey, this is too low for us. I get it. But when you're talking about some of the sections that are in here, it's not all simply about a hardship. It's, you know, section 612, I don't know that it really goes in too much about being a hardship. There are other, you know, items in there that are applicable, and probably, you know, the information related to B and C are there. And then with respect to the variance itself, with any variance, you have to ask yourself, are they asking for the minimum that is necessary for them to achieve what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
There's an objective that they're trying to achieve, but we don't know what that is, right? So if you try to remove yourself and look at it from the 50,000 foot perspective, someone comes in for a 25-foot setback variance. Why do they need a 25-foot setback variance, right? We make them justify why they need a 25-foot setback variance versus 20 feet. In this case, has the applicant demonstrated why they need a 49-foot variance versus a 40-foot variance? That's the question that we should be asking, right? And right now, what we have is information at 150 feet, and we have information at 199 feet, and nothing in between. Nothing to say, you know, we have a 43% difference, right, that's referenced, but what does that really mean? Because at 10, maybe at 160 feet, it's a lot less, like, I don't know. But we make other applicants for variances go through that process, and they are not necessarily providing the same information. And I've talked to them about this very thing, and I've told them that with conditional uses, we apply the same criteria. What we're asking them to do is similar to what we're asking for other conditional applicants to do. The difference is they're a wireless telecommunications provider versus like Joe's operating a auto body shop in a residential area. That's the difference, right? Joe still has to justify that he's going to operate in such a manner that will be consistent with a residential district, right? So how's it any different for them to have to show that the conditional use is going to operate in a manner that's substantially going to be compliant with, you know, what's around it? Same thing.
And I agree with what you're saying. What's gonna, say if we table it, and they bring all this information back, and it goes down the same direction, and then we just, you know.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's almost like
I want, some decision will be made tonight.
It's gotta be. I mean, otherwise, you're just kicking the can.
I'm trying to sort through the feelings and the personalities and all of that, which that is what it is, but it doesn't, there's a sense in which that doesn't matter.
Right. I think that, and I get how it wasn't followed, the rules or the, you know, the form and stuff, but to what you said, Mr. Ford, if they come in with that same data, is it gonna change what they need? And the answer, in my opinion, is no.
Right.
But they didn't submit it to us in the thing, and we keep getting this stuff. And I was gonna say, when they handed me this stuff, I said, well, how do you hand someone something, a packet, in the middle of a meeting and sit there and try to comprehend what the hell is in this thing? Anyway, that's.
I've read it. I've made notes on it. I'll just tell you, I'm buying the argument.
Say again?
I'm buying the argument. So if you're wanting me to make the motion, you need to know that.
Make the motion.
Make the motion.
All right. I've got one question here in regards to my motion. Mr. McCormick, on your report on page 4, items F and G, do I need to actually reference that, or is that, does that need to be made clear in my motion? That, or do you know what I'm saying? Do I need to like read that into it? All of the aesthetics conditions, the 30 days of ceasing operation conditions, I mean,
I
they're,
think if you just reference item and
Just
then
reference
C
item.
and D,
okay, okay,
Good for me.
yeah,
yeah. So I can just reference that rather than actually
yeah.
reading it out.
Right.
Is there anything else besides those that any of you gentlemen think needs to be referenced that's an area of,
I
you know,
wanted the fence, I think the fence ought to be higher, 8 foot.
I don't see where the fence higher than 6 foot's gonna make a difference.
not for the residents, not for their concern, that won't,
It's more
that,
than just looking around there. I mean, just.
yeah, no, I,
Well, I mean, and at the end of the day, if you read F, it says solid masonry, screen
Yeah.
shall consist of a
Right.
solid masonry wall or solid fence, not less than 4 feet, nor more than
More
6
than
feet in
6.
height.
Right.
So it I mean, for whatever reason they specified, it
captured
doesn't
6.
need to be more than 6 feet.
All right,
right, okay.
And
Strike that.
to other people's
Yeah.
point, it is not really gonna matter
yeah.
if it's 6 feet or 8 feet, it's still gonna be, I mean, the ground equipment won't necessarily be that visible, but the fence height's not gonna matter that much at that point.
Okay,
All right.
all right. I make a motion in accordance with Article 4, Sections 441 through 445, and Article 6, Section 612, Item 3 of the zoning resolution. I move to approve the applicant's request for conditional use to allow a wireless telecommunication tower facility on the subject property. So that's step 1. Additionally, in accordance with Article 4, Section 430 through 431, and Article 6, Section 612, Item 3 of the zoning resolution, I make a motion to approve the applicant's request to exceed the maximum height requirement of 150 feet to allow for a 195-foot cell tower with a 4-foot lightning rod. And I'm basing this on the evidence as I see it as presented, the testimony that has been given tonight, and the finding of fact of which I'm relying on this to be true. Should it be found not to be true,
It's void.
then my motion is void. Okay?
I'll second that.
Oh, one thing. With the addendums of items F and G underneath Section 2 of the staff comments being adhered by. And then that concludes my motion.
I'll second that. Roll call.
Mr. Jenk,
No,
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kangro,
Aye.
Mr. Beckman,
No.
Mr. McAdams.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Did we have to vote on both parts or not just,
The motion included both.
since they were together? Okay, all right, that's fine.
There's that, there's that. Here's the stuff now.
We gotta,
We have to make a motion to
Oh, I should
adjourn
close it.
here.
thank you.
I got it clean up stuff. All right, well, is there any new business?
I have none.
No? Anybody have any new business?
nope.
Nope. Me. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
Roll call, Mr. Jenk,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kangro.
Aye.
Mr. Beckman.
Yes.
Mr. McAdams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mike's off.